Hey guys, this is Tiffany again with the Nerdettes, and I'm here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery called Choose Your Pain. And my biggest complaint that I was actually telling one of my friends about this series so far is something that is near and dear to me with Star Trek is I have to love my captain. And we briefly met Captain Philippa, however you want to say it, Georgiou, and now we have, Lorca, and I really want to get to know him as a captain. I feel like we do a little bit this episode, and I like that. We really need more of that, I feel. We focus so much on Michael, and I get what they're trying to do with that, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I need to connect to my captain, and so we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, choose your pain. Hey, it does show Michael. It opens with her in the chamber that Ripper, the tardigrade, was in, and she can. She's imagining what that pain feels like. It's almost like this empathy, like this empathetic, like or empathic connection, and she herself is in this chamber. The machine like latches onto her skin and her body, and she goes through excruciating pain that the tardigrade experiences, only to wake up. And it's, she has, obviously she feels like she can't allow this pain to continue for the tardigrade. And, you can feel that she's definitely wanting to make a move to make it stop. I mean, so it flashes to a meeting between the leadership and Captain Lorca, and basically they are being ordered to dial back the number of their missions and to rein in the use of their spore drives specifically for anything, especially after they took on the Klingon vessel successfully. They feel like they're showing their guns too much, and that their capabilities are coming under scrutiny, not just by Starfleet, but also by the Klingons, and it could cause them to be found, which, as we know, it does. Something with Captain Lorca, we see him doing like these eye injections, so you learn that he needs help with his eyesight. So that's interesting. I'm not really sure. I know he has, we learn later, he has very extreme photosensitivity, so really harsh light will hurt him, or hurt his eyes specifically. So they get an incoming warp signature when he's on a shuttle, and the Klingons warp and get their shuttle. His colleague gets killed, Lorcas does, and you see like a pin drop. And my first thought was, man, he's not even a red shirt, and he got offed. So it's kind of sad that, I'm kind of missing that kind of, nostalgia a little bit, the red shirts. That's kind of that iconic thing that's always been a part of Star Trek. So obviously Lorca is captured by the Klingons. He obviously knows it was a targeted attack, a targeted kidnapping, if you will. And so he's not really sure why, but I mean, all pointers go to the spore drive. So we do see more of that. We'll get there in just a moment, but it does go back to Captain Saru. He doesn't seem to be all that concerned about the tardigrade, about Ripper. Obviously not just Michael at this point, but the lieutenant has gone to him and talked to him. Hey, this creature is in pain. And at one point he actually retracts into himself, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But what's funny is at one point they pull up a list of captains, Saru does, because now that Lorca has been captured, he is acting captain. and he pulls up a list of captains, past and present. And if you look, John Archer is on there. Our very own Scott Bakula from Enterprise is on the list. I was looking for more, but I definitely noticed John Archer was on the list of captains. And of course, that was definitely a moment, like a nod to the series of old. So that was nice. And speaking of nods to series of old, guess who it is? It's Harry Mudd, our very own Tribble aficionado, is on the Klingon vessel. So, and here's where we learn the meaning of the title, Choose Your Pain. Harry Mudd's there, and we see him, Captain Lorca is dumped unceremoniously into this prison chamber, and whenever they ask Harry Mudd to choose your pain, he points. He doesn't even say anything. He points to this, like, I can't even, just, he seems in like a vegetative state, this other gentleman who's up against the wall, and so they beat him into a pulp, literally, and I'm pretty sure he died from the beating. So basically, it lets you know, and he actually explains to Lorca at a later point and says, they will come in, they'll tell you to choose your pain, and either you yourself can take the pain, or you can inflict it on one of your other cellmates. And that's a very interesting strategy, because, would you rather take it yourself, or would you rather have someone maybe you become friends with, or maybe even mortal enemies with? Would you choose for them to take the pain that you yourself, by all rights, should be taking from these Klingons? So interesting. But yeah, so there's just a lot of different things coming on. What is Nash Taylor is, shows up. They talk about the cumulative deterioration of, the tardigrade, how he seems to, with every usage of him in this, spore hub drive, he is having deterioration, and it's not very good. And so now that we know that Lorca has this photosensitivity, the Klingons actually pull him out of his chamber, and how they know about it, I don't know, but basically they use this mechanical device to pry his eyelids open, and they blind him with the most searing light you can possibly imagine. And it's very intense, and of course he screams in agony, and it's really, really scary, to see him in that kind of a situation. So, especially, even studying war, it doesn't really prepare you for something like that. You can only imagine what kind of pain he must be in. So, but yeah, it goes back to Saru, and he's yelling, and he's mad at Michael, and confines her to her quarters because she, keeps, going on about the tardigrade, and he just gets fed up with her at this point. We learn that Mudd has been feeding intel to the Klingons, and that's why he's still fairly hale and hearty in the prison cell and doesn't look very, beaten or battered or worse for wear. He's just, himself. He's been, feeding intel to the Klingons because even Lorca says he dropped a tidbit of information to them in the cell to see if they could be trusted, and obviously the answer is no, they cannot be. But Lorca's last command, we find out, because Mudd goes, has a bit of a moment where he tries to fire back at Lorca and says, your last command, you got this fellow cellmate's, brethren killed. And it was on the USS Baran, and it was ambushed by Klingons, and Lorca was the only survivor. And we find out that Lorca chose to blow them up because while he was safe, he knew what the Klingons' thought process was in war, and that they would torture and probably kill quite a few, if not all, of his crewmates. So he chose to blow them up, and instead of them being tortured. So it's like, it gives you some insight into him as a person. It's like, who, the captain goes down with his ship mindset. As a captain or even a leader, can you imagine, shooting, who knows how many fellow officers and people that you admire and respect, and killing them in that kind of a situation instead of trying to save them. Who knows if they could have been saved even, but it's still kind of hard to hear for sure. And it does make you kind of question his character, not just as a captain, but as a person, as a being in this galaxy. So anyway, they basically, that's right, it goes back to the tardigrade, who kind of closes in on himself. He burrows into like this ball, like kind of like an aardvark does, it kind of burrows into this ball, and it emits and like disposes of all of its hydration. All of the inner bodily fluids are, disposed of like in a puddle beside it, and now it's like a little ball of itself and will not come out because it's been hurt so much. And with this final usage to try to warp where they can attempt to save Captain Lorca, that it's done. It's in so much pain and so much agony, it just closes in on itself, and that's this like defense mechanism. So but yeah, goes back to Captain Lorca. He chooses to inflict pain on his fellow prisoner, and not Mudd, but the gentleman who we learn he blew up maybe his brethren on the USS Buran, and they end up fighting back on the Klingons. They abandon Mudd smartly, if I may say so myself. Lorca shoots the female Klingon, and you can see her face like start to, it's like almost like an acid reaction. It just starts like, just burning into her skin. So it's very, I can imagine a very, mottled faced Klingon showing up in the near future. They do escape with 5 raiders in pursuit. The USS Discovery does beam them on as the ship is blown up, so it's got that kind of explosions and flare. And I think one of my favorite lines so far comes in this moment in the series. Lorca says, you choose your own pain. It goes back to the title. You choose your own pain. Mine helps me to remember. And it's very profound. He's his interaction with the USS Buran, everything that he's endured and his battles, that helps him to remember. And I feel like that he shares that with Michael too. Everything that's happened to her helps her to remember her, what happened with Captain Philippa and the crew of the Shinjo, and just everything that happened in the past. So, but they're able to get away in a blink of an eye again, and we find out that the reason, because Saru has been trying to get them to unfurrow the tardigrade to use him again to warp them out of here. And the lieutenant goes back to supposedly do this at his order, and they've determined at this point that this the spore drive just basically needs a living being. So he has injected himself with the tardigrade DNA, and we find out that he has, after injected himself, gone into the same tube, the same chamber that the tardigrades put in, and has himself taken those pricks and the clamps and all those just deep tools into his own body to warp them to safety. And he's unconscious on the floor. And it's a very kind of, I mean, I kind of saw it coming. I honestly thought it was going to be Michael that did it, especially as much as she had that empathy for the tardigrade itself. I felt like she was going to be the one to do it, but surprise, surprise, that was actually the lieutenant. So, whew, man, I can't even imagine. But I think he's okay. I mean, obviously they do bring him back and revive him from his, like, he's in some sort of like he passed out, or, you know. So they are able to kind of bring him back from being passed out. And then we see Saru confronting Michael again, and he talks about how mad, but even more so how jealous he is of Michael. We know that his threat ganglia have been coming out anytime she approaches, or anytime something happens with her. His threat ganglia have been very active, and maybe this is why. Maybe it's a mixture of that jealousy or that foreboding, or who knows, but he does just tell her how mad and jealous he is of her, because she was Philippa's first officer, and she had so much available to her. She was so intelligent. She is so intelligent. And now she's the number one, I guess, person to watch because of, bucking up and just being I guess, who she's become. She's this mutineer, and it's, yet he's still very jealous of her because her and Philippa were close. So Michael shows him the last will and testament of Philippa and gives him the telescope that was given to her. So, and in that same moment, he also gives Michael the go-ahead to save the tardigrade. So they kind of have this, I don't even know, maybe not so much a bonding moment as a acknowledgement of each other and who they individually are at this point in time, as opposed to who they were in the future, and just where they've kind of both come, because now he's the first officer, and of course he wants to be not just a first officer, but in the future a captain. And his own thoughts and feelings on this all this history, we're starting to see that very much so. So Michael does release the tardigrade. She gives him some spores and releases him into the atmosphere of the galaxy, and you see him warp himself away, and who knows to where. At first I was afraid that someone like the Klingons had warped him onto their ship, but luckily it was just him warping himself to, hopefully, to a spore paradise of mushrooms and a field of, for him to finally be restful and happy and live a long, long life. So who knows? It's very ambiguous, of course. So you find out that the doctor and the lieutenant are together, which is so sweet, and they're having that nighttime ritual, brushing their teeth, talking about their day, and just everything that they've experienced. And of course the lieutenant's trying to reassure him, stop being a doctor, I'm okay, we're, in our room now, you don't have to, try to work on me, or I'm fine, you don't have to patch me up anymore, I'm just fine. And he finishes his nighttime ritual. The doctor's already gone to bed, and he's finishing up himself, and he goes to walk away from the sink, and he does so, but his reflection eerily stays in the mirror. So even though he's gone, his reflection stays, and it eventually turns and walks off too. So whatever he's injected from the tardigrade DNA, we know it's a different type of being. It's very advanced and has so much, so many features we don't really know about. So I guess by injecting him with the tardigrade DNA, he somehow has taken on maybe some of its characteristics, perhaps. I don't know. But whatever it is, he, is causing this to happen. And it is very scary. It reminds me of like Doctor Who, and actually this most recent series with Capaldi, where the where they get sucked into the puddles and it's a reflection, and if you look into your reflection it kind of sucks you in and all that stuff. And maybe like these horror movies like Supernatural has it where they get trapped in the mirror. There's quite a few different I'm sure not just horror series or different things out there, but paranormal things like that. But it's very, very scary, very eerie to see, the lieutenant walk away, but his reflection stay. And who knows what that is going to, create or cause in the future. So is it a separate being in like a parallel universe? Is it, maybe his psyche? Who knows what this is entailing. So very interesting, but what an episode. I am excited to review more and watch more. And this episode really, I want more like this, more focus on Lorca, more about him. We've learned a little bit of his past and his photosensitivity. I'd love to know, was he born with it? Did he get it during war? How did that happen? What exactly was the extent of what happened with the USS Buran that, caused him to have to blow it up, and what was all going on? I want to know more of that story. I feel like we've focused a lot on Michael. We've gotten to know her. Let's focus on Lorca. That's my thing here. I really want more of Lorca. I want to know, just more history there and why he is so fascinated in the study of war, where he got his weapons. I think all that would be an intriguing story. Where he got his tribble. He just now met Harry Mudd, so we know it wasn't from him. So where's the tribble from? I'd love to know. Just different things like that. I'm excited to see what they show us. So, but that's my review of Choose Your Pain, this latest episode of Star Trek Discovery. There was another episode that came out just today. I'm a little bit behind because I've been watching everything. I watched Walking Dead, and there's a review of that. I reviewed Ruby, and I will still continue to review both of those, as well as the Orville. Continue reviewing Star Trek Discovery, of course. We'll be reviewing Stranger Things 2 when it comes out, as well as, more Game of Thrones like we have been. All the cool stuff. We'll keep you guys updated. We're going to do some comic reviews. We've got unboxings of Loot Crate, Loot Anime, Owl Crate, Scotch Box Japanese snacks, which we try on air live for your pleasure. We also have Anime Bento coming, which is awesome. I'm so excited. We'll be having some live streaming of gaming very, very soon, so keep up with that. We've got a Destiny 2 giveaway going on right now, so if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, because that's one of the ways you can win. Check out that video, though, because it does give you a full list of different things you can do to get some entries to win Destiny 2, either through Xbox, PS4, or even through your PC, because it will be available on PC very shortly. So if it's not already, I forget what day that was supposed to come out. Anyway, so subscribe. You can also like us on YouTube at www.facebook.com, or on YouTube, on Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdettes. I'm tired, you guys. I'm sorry. So yeah, definitely like us on Facebook, and we'll have a lot more giveaways close to Christmas that you guys will definitely love. I hope you do. And we definitely want to see you guys again. So subscribe. Definitely a lot more to come. So thank you guys for stopping by. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.